Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in a fix. Midway through his second term, his minority government had a 63% disapproval rating and he lagged 10 points behind his Conservative Party rival. He needed something to turn the tide.
Abracadabra.
And he found it when the Khalistani activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, president of a major Gurdwara in Surrey, British Columbia, was shot dead by two masked gunmen in the parking lot of the shrine. Nijjar was the perfect patsy for two reasons. One, that he was Sikh, and it was a Sikh party with 25 seats, whose leader, a die-hard Khalistani activist, was the one who supported Trudeau when he fell short in the 2021 elections. And two, that he could unite his countrymen by taking action against India meddling in its internal affairs and appear a strong leader. India had been pressuring Canada for several years to deport Nijjar, but Canada had resisted, even granting him Canadian citizenship in 2014 and protected him despite a red corner notice and a 10 lakh bounty over his head. And despite evidence of his involvement in terror activities in Punjab, extortion, targeted killings of Hindu and RSS leaders, and bomb blasts. So when the head of another pro-Khalistani outfit, Sikhs for Justice, accused India of being behind Nijjar's assassination, Trudeau was quick to support him even though they lacked any evidence whatsoever. The fact that just 3 days earlier another Khalistani activist died under suspicious circumstances in a UK hospital and yet another a month earlier was shot dead in Lahore gave enough fodder to the imaginative mind. But almost immediately he embarrassed himself by asking his partners in the Five Eyes to pressure India when none obliged. In fact, American officials themselves had no knowledge of Nijjar's plot, else they would be obliged to inform Canada under the duty to warn doctrine. No matter, he pressed on, sending a fact-finding team to India before the G20 meet, demanding India cooperate, but was rebuffed. Then just days before the G20, Trudeau suspended trade talks with India, then sought to drive it in when he visited New Delhi for the G20 summit and bring up the topic personally with Prime Minister Modi. Instead, it was the Indian Prime Minister that gave the Canadian head a public dressing down, scolding him. India and Modi have reason to be angry. Khalistan is a non-issue in India. 95% Sikhs proudly embrace their Indian identity. This was reconfirmed when there was not even a murmur of protest after Amritpal, the self-styled Brindanwale, was arrested after a 35 days chase in the months of March-April this year. But some countries, especially Canada, seem to delight in keeping the Khalistan issue alive and providing militant Sikhs a safe haven. Canada even facilitated military-type training camps where Khalistanis were taught how to handle AK-47s, sniper rifles and pistols. Some of those trained were then sent to India in Feb 2016 to target police officials and political and spiritual leaders, but were apprehended. Canadian authorities also looked the other way when Khalistani Sikhs held a referendum of Punjabi independence under the guise of freedom of speech, nor took any action against those involved in heinous crimes, including the killing of Punjabi singer Sidhu Moosewala, whose hit was allegedly ordered in Canada by gangster Goldie Brar. Earlier as well, during the 2020 farmer protests, Trudeau had criticized Prime Minister Modi as a ploy to woo the Sikh vote. In Trudeau's 2018 visit to India, a man convicted of the attempted murder of an Indian cabinet minister was invited to events organized for the Canadian PM. If anything, this amounted to a clear case of Canada interfering in the domestic affairs of India. Justin Trudeau seems to be following in the footsteps of his father Pierre Trudeau when he was Prime Minister when it comes to the issue of Khalistan. In 1982, he refused the Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's request to extradite one Talwinder Singh Parmar for the murder of two police officers in Punjab. The same Parmar was later involved in the 1985 Air India attack that claimed 329 lives when Khalistani terrorists blew up the plane mid-air. It is no wonder that no Prime Minister since Indira Gandhi in 1973 has visited Canada except for Manmohan Singh's 2010 G20 visit. Despite this history, Trudeau took it personally when Prime Minister Modi refused him a bilateral meeting and met him briefly only in a pull-aside chat while his Five Eye allies only paid lip service. Thereafter, Trudeau immediately began throwing tantrums, refusing to shake Prime Minister Modi's extended hand during a wreath-laying ceremony at Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi cremation site. Allegedly, Trudeau, over the objections of his security, took out his anger by changing his secure presidential suite installed with bulletproof glass for a normal room. then skipped the president's reception dinner and avoided being present at the announcement of the India-Middle East European Economic Corridor. But karma stepped in when a maintenance issue in his plane left him stranded in his New Delhi hotel room for another 36 hours, where he preferred to waste his time rather than take up India's offer of a substitute plane. Returning home angry, Trudeau told members in Canada's House of Commons, equivalent to our Lok Sabha,
credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
India responded using harsh words normally reserved for countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan by labeling Canada a safe haven for terrorists, extremists and organized crime. Canada then expelled India's Ottawa Raw Station Chief Pavan Kumar Rai, and India retaliated by expelling the Canadian Intelligence Agency Station Chief and halted visas for Canadian citizens after Canadian Sikhs threatened Indian Hindus in Canada, asking them to go home. Trade relations were downsized and music concerts cancelled. India refused to back down and initiated tit-for-tat moves, forcing Canada to reduce the number of its diplomats from 62 to 21. All over a non-issue because Canadian police have neither identified the shooters nor those who had paid them, and no charges have been filed. And while it makes Indians proud that they are accused of having capabilities of chasing their enemies to the far corners of the globe, the truth may lie in inter-Sikh rivalry in Canada's own British Columbia, a rivalry India could have used to its benefit. Last July, another accused in the 1985 Air India bombings, one Ripudaman Singh Malik, was shot dead in the hotbed for Khalistanis, Surrey's British Columbia. Malik was at odds with his one-time pal Nijjar, especially after he had written a letter praising Prime Minister Modi in Jan 2022. The grapevine suggests that Nijjar eliminated Malik last year, and now Malik's camp took their revenge by eliminating Nijjar. Sources say an open contract on Nijjar had been doing the rounds of the dark web for a few days before the killing. Trudeau made an error in judgment in targeting India. The West earlier used the 1980s Khalistani playbook to keep India in check, but the world has changed. And Canada's policy of mollycoddling extremist Khalistani Sikhs may only end up biting itself. Bisbo's limerick. Interference there was of another kind. Other people's business they wanted to mind. Stay out of my zone and leave me alone. A mountain of a molehill is all we find. You will also find these sources listed in our video description section.